Hi, this is Bobby Kimbrough. Welcome to Off the Cuffs. I'm very excited today. Got a young man. I shouldn't say a young man. I got a grown man. I got attorney Kyle Watson with me, hometown favorite, North Forsyth graduate. I'm excited to have him with us today. I want to welcome you to the show, man. It's almost like welcoming family in here. I want you to know I'm excited to have you, and I appreciate you coming out this morning to chat with me.
I appreciate you having me, man. It's really an honor for you to have me here, and I love being here, and of course talking with you. So yeah, great to be here.
Appreciate that. You know why I know you? A lot of people don't know. You know what we always like people to do when we first invite them here. We always like them. You know, don't be bashful. I know you from North Forsyth. I know you. I know your family. I know your mother. You know you like family here. So you are part of the FCSO. However, I want you to tell us a little bit about you. I know you from graduate of North Forsyth, but talk to me.
Yeah, man. Well, yeah, my name's Kyle.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up here in Winston-Salem. I was originally born in Philadelphia, and my mom and I came down here when I was young. And I was, you know, raised here pretty much. Rural Hall, lived in Rural Hall for a while and pretty much stayed in Rural Hall for most of the time, Tobaccoville. And then went to North Forsyth High School, went to Rural Hall Elementary, Northwest Middle, and then North Forsyth High School. So those are my stomping grounds, man. And I love Winston. I always come back to Winston. You know, my family's here. You guys are here. And so, you know, went to school there, went to Charlotte for undergrad and went off into doing what I'm doing now, but you know, that's where I'm from. So let me ask you a question.
So when did you decide you wanted to be an attorney? You know, when I talk to people all the time, you know, I always ask them that question. At what point in your life did you decide, hey, I want to do this, I want to do that? Was that something late in life or something that you knew you always wanted to do?
Yeah, that's actually a good question because it's kind of hard to believe when I think about it. But the first time that I said that I wanted to be an attorney, I was in the 8th grade.
You spoke it.
Yeah, I said it then, and I'm not really sure how genuine it was. I mean, obviously it worked out that way, but you know, you're a kid, you're just like, you know, I want to be this when I grow up, I want to be that when I grow up, and I went through a few different career paths, but you know, something about practicing law just always stuck with me, always super interesting to me. And then from 8th grade on, I pretty much stayed consistent with wanting to do that. And so that's pretty much where it started for me.
So when you left North Forsyth, what year you come out of North?
2011. Yeah, 2011, I graduated from North.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
What you do then?
And I left there and went to UNC Charlotte. Went to Charlotte undergrad. I had a few different options. Ended up choosing UNC Charlotte. Loved it there. Stayed there for four years in and out. And all through there, I had I had a lot of challenges in school. But, you know, ultimately, after 4 years, I graduated 2015, and then I went off to law school. That's when I started in 2015. Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I got to ask you this question, right? I ask people this question all the time. You know, we have people like yourself who are now successful. I always ask this question. What was the defining moment in your life? You know, every man, every woman has a defining moment in your life. That moment that almost broke you, but it also defines you while shaping you.
I think that's a really good question. I think that question might be twofold for me because I've had some moments that I feel really broke me. And maybe that could have been sort of a defining moment, but then I guess, you know, that was sort of tested later at a different time. I'll say one of those big times was when I decided to branch off and start my own practice. And it's not so much the physical and material of it. It was more so the process that I went through in making that decision. You know, God's not really a part of my life. He's the center of it. And I try to, you know, I've been trying to make sure I get closer to him and doing that. And so that whole process, it took a lot of, you know, me putting my own stuff aside and doing what I thought God really wanted me to do. But that time was essentially, you know, I had gone all the way through law school, graduated, I had a pretty decent, really good GPA, got into a law firm that was allowing me to try cases pretty much immediately.
Yeah.
And so had a really good run at that firm, very great firm in South Carolina, one of the longest standing law firms in South Carolina. I think they are the oldest law firm in South Carolina, if I'm not mistaken. Tried a few cases there, and then eventually through word of mouth, people that know me, people that see me, it reached a law firm back in Charlotte. So kind of backtracking, when I went to law school, I started at a law school called Charlotte Law, and they no longer exist. And so I transferred and went to USC in South Carolina. So I went there, and that's when I worked after graduating. And so after having a good run with them, about a year and a half, word kind of traveled back to Charlotte, and I got a really good offer from a law firm in Charlotte, in big law.
So let me ask you a question. So doing all that, when that law school closed and you decided, hey, now I got to pack up, uproot, and go somewhere else. I mean, so many times in life when one door closes, another door opens. What made you decide that, hey, I can't give up? You know, most people, when they start out on the journey, if they have some bumps and bruises, but I think I know the answer because you said you made God not a part, but the center. Yeah.
That actually forgot about that. That was a really big point in my life and a lot of other people's lives too. The school shut down, or the school got in some trouble and ended up shutting down eventually, but everybody basically had to leave. And this was in the middle of the school year. And if you know anything about law school, they don't let you sort of just transfer here and there, you know, in the middle of the semester, right, like undergrad does. And then typically, you know, law school's 3 years, and typically you can only transfer after your first year. So if you started your second year, you typically can't go to a new law school without starting over. And I was in my second year when this happened. And so luckily, a lot of schools were allowing us to transfer there, but you still had to have the grades. You still had to have the credentials. And so that semester, I believe 4 people were accepted into USC, and I was the 4th one. But essentially, I just threw out a bunch of applications, and my whole mindset was just that since I was in the 8th grade, I knew I was going to be an attorney. So to me, there was no other option.
I like that.
There was no backup plan. It was, okay, well, the next thing that needs to happen is I need to put everything else aside and start filling out a bunch of applications. And this is right around Christmas as well, right? It's in the middle of the school year after midterms. And so I threw in a bunch of applications. We got some responses back. I was rejected by a few schools, accepted by a few schools, and USC was the best choice for me. But I didn't really see another option there. And there's a lot of other people that weren't as fortunate, you know, maybe had other things going on in their lives, families, kids, things like that, couldn't afford to really start over and go to a new law school. But, you know, luckily it was in my path and I was able to do it. But yeah, I just felt I needed to stay resilient and keep going.
I got to ask you this question, right? And I'm asking you for a lot of reasons, because a lot of people are going to see this. A lot of people are going to say, wow, he did it. Can I do it, right? You said that you were born in Philadelphia, right?
Yeah.
You said you and your mother came down here, right?
Yes.
And so what was, you know, most people use that as a crutch, you know. I come out of a single parent household, right? Most people, I'm not going to say, and maybe that's not a good word, they use it as a crutch, but they allow themselves to develop a mindset, well, it's different. But in your case, tell me what was driving you, because, you know, I know your mother, I know she's strong, but did you let that affect you? You know, I've heard you say many times, you know, how you had her in your life, you had her in this, right? She was a driving force that was driving and keeping you where you needed to be. So my reason for asking this question is because there's a young kid somewhere that's going to say, hey, you know, I can't do this. I didn't have it gifted to me. It's just me and my mom. I got to do that. Talk to me.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The answer to your question is at times, yes, I probably let it affect me. I would be lying if I said I just went through everything and everything was great and I was super strong and super resilient and never had any times where I felt super down and super low. You know, so absolutely it's affected me. But, you know, I think everybody, at least in this building, knows, you know, how great she is. She's sitting over there now.
Yeah.
She was an amazing support system. And so, there's no way I would have gotten as far as I've gotten now without her 100%. But what I will say is that, no matter what it is, whether it be your household structure, whether it be finances, whether it be circumstances, whether it be the consequences of your own mistakes, right?
True.
You can't let any of that really hold you in place and define you, right? And so I'm always trying to be forward looking and looking to see, one, how I can better myself. A lot of times we ask for stuff and pray for stuff that we're not ready for. And so I want to always try to make sure I better myself. And then secondly, look forward to say, okay, what is it that I need to do now to get to wherever it is I'm trying to go? And just keeping that focus. Have I lost focus plenty of times? Absolutely. But regaining that focus, having a great support system around you, and being focused on what it is that you set out to do was kind of the driving force there. So yeah, it's definitely affected me, but the person that was there was, I couldn't ask for a better person. Yeah.
I get it. And I understand that. Yeah. I can see that. I've seen a lot of things in my life, and I've always been able to identify the it factors, right? When people got that it factor. And I'll never forget when I realized you had that it factor was the day I witnessed the results come back. You remember that?
I do, very vividly.
And I was looking at you, right? And I said, that boy got it. And then I remember seeing you graduate, and I said, he gonna be fine. And then I saw how people gravitated towards you. And so what I'm saying is that the humility and all those things that you picked up along the way has made you the successful attorney you are today, right? What I want you to know is that we love talking about our unsung heroes, those local guys that are going to be giants, right? They came up here, the next giants up. We appreciate that. So I want you to do me a favor. If you had to lay a blueprint out, right? If you were talking to some young boys right there, we're in the 8th grade, I want you to take maybe a few minutes or whatever you want to take, a second, 2, 3, whatever, right? And what would you say to them? If I was that 8th grade kid, right? And I was like, man, I want to be this. Because what I've seen with kids sometimes is so many times is that kids are who they have to be, not who they want to be.
Yeah.
In other words, who they have to be in order to survive where they're at. And sometimes they take on behavior that keep them from being who they want to be. Yeah. So if I was that kid in the 8th grade right now, what would you tell me?
Yeah, specifically to kids, especially that young too, I would say, so to give you an example of how I was, right? I was never the super cool kid, growing up. And so,
look at you now.
and, I had, people knew who I was. I had friends and things like that, but, I was the straight A kid. I was the guy always studying. Yeah. I really didn't have a choice because my mom would not let me, slack on any schoolwork. But, I kind of took pride in having good grades and doing well myself.
It's good stuff.
And so what I say about that, the reason why I say that is because a lot of times when you're that young, you're very influenced by the people, the other kids around you and what's cool. I promise you, none of that matters when you're talking about your future, right? So schoolwork, grades, extracurriculars, anything that you're doing, I always say anything that's worth doing is worth doing 100%, right? And so doing what you're supposed to do, despite what other people around you are doing, what's cool, what's trendy, what's something, you might get picked on for, you got your books or you're studying, or I'm not going to do that because, I'm not going to skip class, or I'm not going to, engage in whatever this behavior is or activity is. And you might be looked at as, whatever you want to call it. It just, it of course mattered to me at certain times when I was younger, but as I got older, you look around, it's like, man, it really doesn't matter, because look at what you guys are doing, right? And you're struggling in grades, and that's making your life harder and things like that. So I just try to, I would say, just really stay focused on the things, and especially if you have great parents and support system around you, do what you're asked to do. There's a reason why adults are adults, and they've gone through things that you don't quite know about yet, and you don't understand the consequences of your actions. And that's something else that has resonated on me later in life, is that there are always consequences to everything that you do, whether they're immediate or delayed.
Right.
And it's the delayed consequences that people are blindsided by.
Don't see it.
And a lot of times you might be dealing with those consequences and don't even realize it. And that might be holding you back from whatever it is that you're trying to get to.
Right.
And so that's a very obtuse sort of explanation of what I mean, but essentially just staying true to what you're supposed to be doing that young, and stand on top of your grades, listening to what it is your teachers and various folks along the way are telling you to do, and not trying to fit in with everybody else. As I grew up, I became very okay with not being in the same kind of crowd as a lot of different people, because you have to separate yourself from certain behaviors, certain qualities, characteristics, the whole idea of how to respond to certain conflicts. This might be popular to you're supposed to handle this way, and that's going to put you in a bad position going forward. And you just have to be mindful of those consequences. So just keeping in mind that there are 100% consequences to everything that you do. And so keep that focus. You can get to where you want to go to.
So what type of law are you practicing now?
So I'm currently a civil litigator. I do personal injury, employment law, and then some general civil litigation. I used to do a little bit of criminal, but I've since gravitated 100% towards civil litigation.
So where are you at now?
So right now, I work. So my office is in Charlotte, and I work for myself. I have my own law firm, the Watson Law Office, and we practice in North and South Carolina. So I'm licensed in both states, and we practice in state and federal court.
That's good stuff.
Yeah,
that's good stuff. So let me ask you a question. You've given me some nuggets that I'm going to take with me. One is, don't make him a part of your life, make him the center of your life, he being God. The other one is, we say it all the time, is that decisions create conditions, sometimes immediate and sometimes delayed. So here's my question for you, right? Because I ain't going to hold you. I know you're a busy man. And I know when them lawyers say time is money, right? So my question, what's next for Attorney Kyle Watson? What's next for you, man? What do you see yourself next? What's going on?
Yeah. You
look like a congressman.
I don't know about that.
But go ahead.
I actually want to try to do something. I like to be sort of towards the ground and helping folks. We get a lot of phone calls and help people. I like really having my ear to the ground with that. But going back to the decision to even start my firm, that kind of tells you where I'm going to go.
Yeah.
When I left the firm that I was at, it was a great firm. I learned a ton. It was fantastic. But, I was hearing a little whisper in my head saying, you need to go ahead and move. You need to go ahead and move. And, I had a timeline, but I had a different timeline.
Yeah.
I was going to wait about a year to save money and, get my feet together and everything. And I kept hearing God say, nope, you need to leave this firm. You need to go ahead and start. 6 months, and then 3 months, and then 2 months, and then eventually it was just screaming at me like, you've got to leave right now. And I did it. And so when I left and started my firm, the day, so I announced it on, I believe, January 5th or 6th of 2022, I believe, or 2023. And the very next day, I got a call from a guy who was about to run out of time to file a lawsuit, and no lawyer would take his case because of the time limit. And, I ended up taking it, and that ended up being one of the biggest cases that I've ever had. And it allowed us to break out and actually expand. And now we're 3 years in, we're going into our third year practicing. And so what I aspire to do and continue to do is to, help people we do half of my practice is employment law, half is personal injury. And then in both of those cases, in employment law especially, you get so many people that, either have been discriminated against or retaliated against illegally. And, you talk to people. I talk to people every day, and they are just distraught or upset or crying, or they just need to vent, or they just don't understand what's going on and why it's happening to them and all of these things. And they feel like the big bad corporation is against them. They don't have anywhere to look. And so, I think that we're all here to be service or service each other and be helpful to everyone else. And so I take I have a lot of passion to helping people when they feel like they don't have anyone else to sort of fight for them. Just yesterday I got a note from my paralegal saying that somebody we referred her to another case, to another law firm at one point, because of our caseload at the time. And then she heard from somebody off the street, hey, you need to call this guy. If you have an employment case, he'll fight for you. And she called back. And so we took the case and we took the consult, just to see what's going on and see if we can help. And so that's what I like to do. So, whether it be, full-fledged litigating, as we do right now, I work 50, 60, 70 hours a week, most weeks, or just being, having other people helping and working with me, to do that. That's sort of what's next. I just want to continue to do that, continue to help people, to continue to be service to other people, and helpful to the community.
Well, know that we're very proud of you here, proud of you back home in Winston-Salem, man. Whatever God has for you, I'm sure it's a blessing. You're doing an amazing job, and you look amazing at the same time. And I want you to know that I appreciate you. It's been a pleasure having you here. It's always a pleasure watching you, how you move, and it's truly evident that God is the center of your life. I want to thank you for stopping by here. I want to thank your mother. Got one question for you. So if I was trying to find you, how would I find you?
Yeah. So our website is watsonattorney.com.
Watsonattorney.com.
Watsonattorney.com. And our office line is 704-885-5085. Call us anytime. We usually keep our phone lines open 24/7. And so you'll be able to get in contact with somebody to get your name and information down, have somebody reach out to you. And then we'll reach out and get you on the calendar. And also, I appreciate the kind words, and I also want to say I do want to thank you as well. You do a lot in the community. We
appreciate
were just talking
that, man.
yesterday about how great you are in the community and with the people here. So we appreciate you as well.
Yeah. Once again, we've had Attorney Kyle Watson. We just want to thank him for stopping by. As always, have a great rest of your week. We love you. And anytime you're in the area, stop by and see us. We love you, brother.
I appreciate it, man.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.